Hello, welcome to Waka Waka Breaking It Down. This video, we're going to focus on using the TI-Nspire to graph some equations that maybe have some big numbers in it or something that doesn't pop up in your window right away. So you're going to have to adjust your window. And then also we're going to use the intersection tool under Analyze to find solutions to equations. Okay, so the numbers that I'm going to use come from this worksheet, the class 52 exponentials. We're also looking at exponential functions as well in this video. So the basic compound interest equation and also the continuous compounding interest with E. So we'll look at both of those and do the same problem with both equations and see how different our answers are. I'm only going to do like one problem, but it's going to be in two different ways. And there's going to be a lot about the TI-Nspire in there. So if you need help with your TI-Nspire, this is the video for you. All right, so the numbers I'm picking out are Italy. So we can see Italy's population. Where did that go? My thing is, oh, right here in the middle. So I can see Italy and its rate, its growth rate. It has a negative growth rate. So starting off at 60 million and it has a negative 0.15% growth rate. I'm taking that and I'm going to compare it to Kenya. And the reason I picked these two, where's Kenya? Right below here. The reason I picked these two is that their populations were kind of close to begin with. And this one had a negative rate, while this one has a positive rate. This starts off higher, and with a negative rate is going to go down. This starts off lower, but with a positive rate is going to go up. So I know these two are going to intersect sometime in the near future, and their populations are going to be the same. I know it's going to be in between 53 million and 60 million somewhere, um, because this one's going up and this one's going down. So I already kind of in my brain analyzed like what's going to happen, right? I know what this graph is going to look like before I even graph it out, just by the numbers, right? Just by the negative rate or the positive rate and what I'm starting amount is. All right, so those are the two countries I'm going to use. Let's jump to the TI-Nspire and start plugging that in. The first thing I like to mention with the TI-Nspire is a lot of people use Scratchpad, which can be fine if you're used to clearing out your Scratchpad. If you go to Document, if you're in Scratchpad, there's a place at the bottom that you can clear out your Scratchpad. So please do that often so things aren't all, you don't have 20 different equations going on at once and all these things, right? I honestly recommend that you open up a brand new document each time you kind of work a new problem set. So what you do is you hit the home button. And when you do that, there'll be a bunch of options in there, right? Scratchpad's on the left and then the document stuff is on the right. I recommend the document. So if you hit number one, so go to home and number one. I can't show you because I'm using my TI-Nspire on the computer. But if you hit home and then go to number one, it will give you, whoops, it will give you options of what kind of page you want. You want a calculator page or a graph or whatever, right? And in different classes at ASIJ or anywhere in college even, you'll use different things. Usually the calculator and the graph is what you'll use, but which is in Scratchpad. But if you're doing geometry, you might do some drawing with geometry. Up here. Or if you're in, when you do statistics, you might do some spreadsheets or you might do some data and statistics work, right? And do a scatter plot or do some different types of graphs. Okay, so there are some really cool pages there. That's what makes the TI so powerful. People are afraid of the TI-Nspire. They're like, oh my God, the TI-Nspire is so much going on. I don't know how to use it. It's really not that bad once you get used to it. And once you do get used to it, you'll realize what a powerful tool you have in front of you. People like to go to Desmos to graph stuff out, which is fine, but you can't use Desmos on a test. And you also, to be honest, Desmos doesn't have the powerful features that the TI-Nspire actually does have. Desmos doesn't do everything that your TI-Nspire does. So if you can get used to your TI-Nspire, you're going to realize what a powerful tool it is, and you'll be able to quickly and efficiently and accurately solve tons of different types of problems in tons of different types of classes. Okay, so here we go. Right away, you'll see after you put your page in, I'm using a graphs page because we're going to graph these things out. Okay, so make sure, like I said, home, number one, that'll start a brand new document. Just tell it, I don't want to save my old document. You do not need to save it. I mean, unless you really want to, you can save it, put a name on it, and save it in your documents. But I just usually just say no, and then this will pop up and say I want a graph page, and then when you get a graph page, it'll look like this. Now, if the equation bar is up already, that's great. But if it for some reason disappeared on you, you're like, wait, where did my equation bar go? Just hit the tab button. You see over here on the left of your calculator, over here on the left, right? There's a little tab button. It's a very powerful button, actually. People don't use it that often. But hit tab, and when you hit tab, your equation bar should pop back up again. All right, so let's start writing the equation. If you go back to those numbers that I had over here, right, for Italy, I've got the 60 million number, whoops, and the negative 0.15%. And then for Kenya, I've got the 53,771 and then the 2.28%. So maybe just write those numbers down real quick so you can plug them into your TI. All right. Hopefully you got them. Can you see them? Italy here, Kenya here. All right. I have them written down on a separate piece of paper. So that's what I'm looking at right now when I do this. All right, so let's do it once where it's just compounding interest, where I look at that interest rate as just once a year. So I'm gonna always start with the start, right? Start with the starting amount, 461,826. That's the population of Italy. On the TI-Nspire, if I just put parentheses, sometimes it has a problem with that. You should put the multiplication symbol for it so it knows that you want to multiply. Otherwise, it thinks that you forgot, and like it doesn't know whether you want to add, subtract, or divide, or whatever. So put the multiplication in there. Then you can put your parentheses, and then we have a negative rate, so I'm going to go 1 minus because it's a negative, excuse me, negative population rate. Now the percentage was point. Let me write this out. A lot of people mess this up. 0.15%, and it was negative. Boom. Right? So if I want to change a percent to a decimal, I have to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So in order to actually use this in my equation, I actually have to use 0.0015 if I want it to be proper, because it's 0.15%, right? And that needs to change into a decimal. You can't put percentages into your equation. You have to use decimals. So I'm going to do this. 0.0015, right? A lot of people mess that up. Okay, and then we need a power. So how many years am I going? Well, that's the whole thing. That's what I'm solving for. How many years is it going to take for these to intersect? Excuse me. If I cough a lot, that's just, I'm not feeling well today. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to put X up here. You can see on your calculators down here, the buttons down the bottom, right? And it's just a letter, but you can see they put X, Y, and Z in gray. That way, people would know that those are actual variables that you can use in equations, but we use X, right? Okay, so I'm not done yet. That's just one equation. I can graph it if I want, but I might as well do both equations first before I start messing with my window. All right, I'm gonna arrow down. So I'm just gonna hit the down arrow button. When I did that, this will take me to function 2. If I arrow back up, it goes back to function 1. I can change things if I want, but I need to write my function 2. So you can arrow up, arrow down, right? Okay, let's write our second equation. So now I'm looking at Kenya. It has a starting population of 53,771,296. Again, use multiplication. 1. This time the rate is positive. And I started off with a 2.28%. It's a percentage. If I want to change it to a decimal, which I need to do, I have to move the decimal 2 spots. So I get 0.0228, okay, as a decimal. So in here, I'm back to, easy. 0.0228, right? That moves my decimal from here over to here, 2 places, right? Can you see at the top there? All right, and then I still have to raise that to the x power because we don't know how many years, right? So my x-axis is in years. How many years from now? This is supposedly the population in 2020. And then the y value is the population, right? So this is going to spit out populations as we go along. All right, I'm going to hit enter. Just come down here, hit enter. Now, when I do that, I'm like, oh, I must have made a mistake. I don't see anything. Well, you didn't make a mistake. It's just that we haven't changed our window yet. Our window right now is going from like 1 to 6 and 1 to 10. But when when we started with our equations, I'm going to hit tab here, tab. I can scroll up and look. You can see my equations. This is like 53 million, right? And this one's like 60 million. So the numbers are starting with are in the millions. I'm going to hit tab again to close it off. All right, so you can tab to open, close. All right, now I got to go to my window. So you're going to go to menu, and under the menu, you'll see this window right here. Now, a lot of people try to zoom in and zoom out, but that's really a mistake in this case because your time period is not increasing at the same rate as your population is. We want our time period to just be in years, like 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years, but probably not even that much. So, but I want my Y value to be in terms of population, like millions, right? 50, 60, 70 million. So it needs to be way up there. So if I just zoom in and zoom out, I'm going to have like a million years on my x-axis, and I'm not going to be able to see my graph. So the x values and the y values are different. So it's way better to just logically think it out and go into your window settings right here. Please don't use the zoom in, zoom out, especially in this case. Now, sometimes this little zoom fit right here, sometimes I'll go to that first and just hit it and see if it helps. Oh, did you see that? I hit zoom fit and it went right to it. It went right to it. There's my intersection. I didn't even have to think about it. Beautiful button, the zoom fit. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Now, sorry. Now, what if it doesn't work? Let's take a look. And you need to know this. So let me go back. Can I undo this? Yeah, so I undid my zoom. You can do like Command Z, or you can do Control Z on here, just like you would on a computer to go back. Sometimes it works, right? Okay, so you're starting here. Maybe you did zoom fit and it didn't work. Let's look at the window. Okay, so window settings. They have the X minimum, X max, right here, and then we have the Y minimum, Y max. Don't leave this scale alone. You don't need that. So in the minimum, the X values, remember we said was years. So just think it out. Like, how many years do I want? Is it just 10, 20, 30? I don't know. Let's put in 20 years, see what happens. Okay, but the Y value is the big one. I'm just going to start at 0. This is population. And remember we said it goes up to like 60 million, right? So maybe I go a little more than that just so I can see it, like 65 million. Right? And you got to get your zeros right. Double check them. That's thousands, millions, right? Okay, so this should at least give me a good idea where the graph is. So if I hit OK, oh, there it is. Now, it isn't perfectly centered. What are some things I can do? You can take your mouse. If you hover over something and then you just, click the center of this thing, right? Can you see right over here on the mouse pad? If you click the center of this and hold it while your cursor's over it, this will turn into a little hand. Mine isn't showing that, but it'll turn into a little hand that you can grab stuff. So I can pull these out of the way if I want, but you have to click again to let go. If I want, I can grab the screen. I'm going to grab just the middle of the screen in midair, like there's nothing there. It's like grabbing the piece of paper. So if I click that and hold, the hand should close, and then I can move my screen around to put this wherever I want it to go. You can just scroll it around. Right? So maybe I want to do that. Other things you can do, I'm just going to move these right now. And this is on the handheld as well. You can do it, I'm doing it on the computer, but you can do it on the handheld as well. You can grab these axes. If you want to zoom in on this a little bit, you can zoom in and out using this and moving it up and down. I can do the same thing down at the bottom. You can grab the axis and move the X if you want. You have to kind of click and hold for a bit until the little hand, there's a hand there, right? That hand will close, and then you can kind of let go and you can scroll your mouse around a little bit. And then when you're ready to let go, just click it again and it'll let go, right? So you click and hold until the hand closes, slide it around a little wherever you want to slide it around, and then click again to let go. All right, it's a little skill you can just practice. Once you get used to it, it's really easy. All right, so I can see my window. Zoom fit would have worked, but in this case, I just logically thought out a good window, and there I am. So now I can go to my menu again. So it's menu, right? Menu, which it looks like this. And then you get analyze, graph, and the intersection tool. Now, when it comes up, it'll say, what's the lower bound? You see that in the left-hand corner down here? It says, what's the lower bound, right? So you just don't go right on the intersection. Go a little bit to the left, click, move your cursor over, just slide it over and go to the right, and you'll see the point pops up. Just click, and then the point will be there. So 4.87 years later is when the population of Italy and this one's Italy, and the population of Kenya will be the same. Well, what will be their population? Well, right here I can see it. Now this notation down here is a scientific notation. The E just represents times 10 to the 7th power. So it's the same thing as saying times, oh, that's ugly, times 10 to the 7th power, which means move your decimal 7 places to the right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? I'd have to keep moving that over. I'd have to add some zeros into this and move it all the way over. So that really represents 60 million, that number, right? This number is 60 million. What if I want to see the digits instead of trying to like decipher scientific notation? You can do that. So back into your menu, and then in your menu down here at the bottom, it says settings. So you go to settings, and you might have to click on document settings for depending on which calculator you have, a newer version or older version. And then at the top, they have the float right here. 60 million, that's like 8 digits or something long. So maybe I do float 10, and then you can make it your default or just say okay. And then when you do that, you see how my number expanded and the scientific notation is gone. So I'm just changing the decimals the calculator is showing me, right? The calculator can do everything. You just have to tell it to do it. Why do people not like this calculator? Because they don't want to think. If you're a thinker, someone who can just logically think stuff out, then this is not a problem. Okay, so here we go. Context again before I move on. 4.87 years later from 2020 will be 2024, maybe almost 2025, and we will have a population of 60 million. Both countries will have a population of 60 million. Italy would have dropped down to 60 million, and Kenya would have increased up to 60 million, but they would have the same population. Okie doke. Now, I want to do the same thing, but I'm going to change these equations to E. So I'm going to leave that population there. So I hit Tab. I scrolled up. I did an up arrow. And instead of using this particular or instead of using the compound interest equation, I'm going to use E. So this is the same starting population, but you see on the left-hand side over here on the calculator, there's a little button here, E to the X. So I'm going to hit that. You see I have a nice bold E? That's the correct one. If you try to use the E down here at the bottom, this one down here, that's just a letter and it's not going to work. So that one does not work. You have to use the one over on the left over here. That's the actual mathematical E, which is like 2.718, right? Okay, so after I hit E, it automatically gives me a little power up there. So up there is where you want to put your rate. So this was the Kenya equation. So I have to put in 0.0228 and then times my time, times my years. So that's times X. So I'm changing the equation from the compound equation into the continuous compound equation. I just want to see how different they are. Remember, our numbers now are 4.87 and 60 million. 4.87 or 4.88 maybe, and 60 million. Let's see how that changes. All right, I'm going to arrow up again. So arrow up, and I'll go to my first equation. I'm going to change that one as well to E. So hit the E button. My rate, now this time my rate was negative. So I have to put negative 0.0015. You're still using the decimal version. and then times x. One mistake I see people make, they try to put a 1 in here because, when you do the regular compounding one, you have a 1. But when you do E, you don't put the 1 in there. Let me scroll down and show you. Yeah, this one doesn't have a 1 in front. Don't do the 1. Like some people do that. It's not a 1 in front. So don't mix your equations up. The equations are different. It's just the rate alone. And it like the original 1 is the already kind of part of the E. It's already in E because E is 2.7. So part of that 2.7 is the original 1 that we had. Okay, so when I hit enter and graph those, I'm just gonna hit enter so it'll graph out. You can see it's already been changed. So those are changed, right? You can see the equation at the top and the bottom. And my intersection didn't really change that much, but a little bit. It used to be 4.88. Now it's 4.83. So if I round it, so a little bit sooner, right? Why? Because, well, E will make things grow faster. So it happened a little quicker where they had an intersection. It's still 60 million, but the change, right? What I call the change, the little amount has changed a little bit. Not a whole lot. So they're very, very similar, especially with short amounts of time. But it's just a different idea, right? Is it compounding once a year, which is what we did before, compounding once a year? Or like now, is it compounding continuously, right? I don't know. It's kind of arguably like which one's better. Is the rate that was given to us, is that supposed to be used for once a year? Or is that just a rate that can be compounded because people all over the world are just having babies like constantly, right? So we should use a continuous compounding. Like I don't know which one's better, right? It just depends on what this rate really means, or what your situation is and how you can justify it one way or the other. Sometimes it really does make a difference, but sometimes it isn't such a big deal, because they'll both give you answers in the same ballpark. All right, so that's a quick like how to use my calculator to kind of do these things. I will, even though I don't like to do it, I will show you how to use the solve feature on the calculator real quick. It's a great way to check your answers, but you need to know how to graph. It's a graphing something out and logically thinking about the window and being able to find that intersection is a skill you need to know, especially before you go to pre-calculus next year. All right, so everybody needs to know that skill, and you will be tested on that in Algebra 2. So make sure you know what to do. Okay, but if you want to check your answer, I'm not saying cheat and just use the solve and forget about the rest of it. I'm saying if you want to check your answer, this is what you can do. I'm going to write down those two equations again, 64, 6, 1, 8, 2, 6 times 1 plus 1 minus 0.0015 raised to the x. And then I'm going to arrow to the right one and then say equals. I'm going to make an equation out of this to say like when they're equal to each other. So I'm just rewriting what we did before. This is a positive rate. And then I have to raise it to the x power. So now I've got an equation where one equation for population growth of one country equals the other one. And I wrote the word solve ahead of time. Hopefully you saw that when I started writing it, right? I just typed it in using the keyboard at the bottom, just write solve. Now there is a solve button inside the menu, I think under algebra or something, which you can find. Okay, so I'm not done yet though. So I write solve, I write my equation, whatever it is, and I use x as my variable. And then I have to say comma x. That's important. If you don't have that, it won't work. You have to tell the calculator what you want to solve for. So when I do that, I'll hit enter and it'll solve for me. 4.88. Remember that was our first solution, was 4.88 years. Great. There you go. I didn't have to do any graphing or anything. You can get your solution this way, but honestly, like it's not learning, right? It's just learning how to throw something in a calculator without learning what you're doing. So you need to know how to graph these out at this point. Next unit, we're going to be using logarithms, and you need to know how to use logarithms to solve these type of equations. So we will be doing that in the future. But it's a great way to check your answer. You should have a way to kind of verify yourself. So there it is. All right. Let me know if you got questions in class, and happy graphing.